Hi everyone, I'm Brock McDonald.
And I'm Harv. Welcome to RCBC TV.
Today we're going to talk innovation. Some of you may recall that a few conferences ago we heard from Clark Chow of Plasco Plastics about a product that he'd created called Stompstone. Now that was innovative because it was the first time that anyone had been able to combine plastics with post-consumer rubber from tires. Now we're going to hear a little bit about some tire work today from you, but it's kind of reverse of that, isn't it? It's not post-consumer tires, it's post-consumer materials that are going to make tires.
Yeah, and before I go into that, I was talking about the Stompstone. I mean, there was another idea where they were using tire crumb in asphalt. Remember in cold places? I know they did it in Winnipeg a few years ago, and they were like, oh, adding that tire crumb will add some resiliency and flexibility to the road asphalt. And then in the spring, hopefully, the goal is that you don't have as many potholes.
Yeah, and another factor that they found in Ontario, because they tried it there in a pilot project, is that the asphalt was black, right? It came out really black.
Yeah.
And what that did was, of course, it attracted sunlight, so in cold weather it was less icy.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
That's great. You double win. So this innovative idea is from researchers at Ohio State University, and what they're doing is they're using food waste as a replacement for carbon black.
Wow.
And carbon black is a petroleum-based filler that's used in tire manufacturing. So right now, tires are made up of about 30% of this carbon black. It's getting a little bit more scarce of a resource. You know, as more of the world is driving, more tires. So they're trying to find alternatives that they can use as this filler material.
Right.
And now they're trying to patent a method that uses eggshells and tomato peels as the filler material.
Sure.
So we're not talking about eggshells from your breakfast. Americans eat about 50 billion eggs a year, and those are processed at the large-scale food factories. So you've got this ongoing large volume supply of eggshells. And then same thing for the tomatoes. It's the second most popular vegetable in the US.
Right.
And then if you can or process a tomato, you've got to remove the skin first.
Yes.
And all of this stuff typically is hauled and landfilled, so you're paying fees and, there's costs associated with it. But if you could divert it and instead use it for this tire manufacturing process, then you're saving those costs and creating an ongoing feedstock.
Wow, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
I like where that innovation is going because it sounds to me like it could also create regional opportunities as well, right? Because you create the product, their material, and the product close together, I would assume.
Totally. You could build those, synergistically, right?
Yep.
And each of these, they chose the tomatoes and the eggshells because they each offer unique features and properties to the final tire. One of the fun things about it is it's the color, because you don't get that black color. So these tires come out sort of this reddish brown shade instead. So I don't know, maybe red would be the new green?
Maybe. I like where that innovation is going for sure. Okay, the next story, it's a product that we could definitely use here in BC, or maybe I should say reuse. Why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so if you saw the news this weekend, there was an oil spill off Vancouver Island near Port McNeill.
Yes.
It was, about 1,500 liters of diesel that spilled, and they used these absorbents to help soak up that oil. And they're kind of like, using a paper towel. It's single use, you soak up the oil, and then you either, dispose of it in landfill or you incinerate it. So it's pretty wasteful. But there's this new material, and it's a plastic foam item that's coated in these molecules, and it soaks up the oil, and it can be squeezed out like a sponge and then reused. So it's win-win because you're recovering the oil, and then you're able to reuse the sorbent material.
Oh, that sounds great. We could really use that on the coastline here in BC.
Yeah.
In fact, Canada has 3 coastlines. We've got the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Arctic. And with global climate change creating more access because of the melting ice, the pressure's really on now for oil exploration in the Arctic. So I hope we don't need that product, but it's a good thing that it's available.
It's there, and they haven't really been able to test it in like a real world condition in deep sea conditions, but they've tested it in test facilities, and they say it would be great. It could be used right now for shorelines or coastlines where you can't use the dispersants.
Right. Well, that sounds great. Well, that adds a whole new dimension to the discussion. And speaking of dimensions, We've all had access to 3D printing for a while now, but the methods and application for applying that process are rapidly expanding through innovation. Now in China, you can print a house in a day using concrete, which is one of the earlier materials that has been used. But the UK now is using some compounds of some newer materials that are slightly more complex. What have you learned about that?
Yeah, so it was a story in this month's issue of Recap, and it was about 3D printing and the green economy from the UK. And in this study, they're suggesting that these new materials designed for recycling could lower manufacturing costs. And 3D printing was used to create parts and products that were even more durable than traditional plastics. And then that would hopefully enable more eco-friendly business models and product life cycles.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can take it even further and also use it in the remanufacturing industry, making it possible to refurbish parts. You could produce spare parts more cheaply and in smaller batches, and then hopefully extend the life cycle of these products, and that's more cost effective, as well as, you're working against planned obsolescence when you're able to repair or remanufacture items.
Well, another element to this is there's a new process that has been created in BC using concrete, which is a material that 3D printing uses. And what they're doing now is they're injecting carbon into the concrete. And so that sequesters carbon. It creates actually a stronger concrete product at the end of the process. So it looks like we'll be able to apply that kind of innovation in British Columbia
locally,
and the rest of Canada. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, because there's a project going on now here in Vancouver, I think, and then there's one planned for Victoria. So we'll keep people posted on that as it develops. Now, moving from that 3D printing to PPP, June 21st to 23rd, delegates to the RCBC 2017 will hear about some innovative circular economy approaches for packaging and printed paper stewardship. We'll be presenting what I call a super session on EPR, the circular economy and applications of that, with 4 speakers that are talking about EPR competition, something called independent producer responsibility that's being developed in Ontario, and also preparing for circular economy business. It also includes a presentation from Cascades that they're calling, "Are we going circular or just going around in circles?"
So what goes around comes around? Is that the...
Well, I don't know how much karma is involved, but we're certainly interested to hear about that. This whole competition-based information that's changing what EPR may look like, both here in BC and in Ontario.
And when are we going to get more information on that?
Well, the RCBC 2017 program is crystallizing now, and that super session is going to include presentations followed by a panel discussion and roundtable engagement with the delegates. So stay tuned for updates on that and other solution-based content. We'll have that in our future episodes. You'll see it on our website, and don't forget to check out our Twitter feed at RecyclingBC. Well, that's it for now. I'm Brock McDonald.
And I'm Harv. We'll see you next time on RCBC TV.